She stepped onto her porch, arms crossed, voice dripping with disdain. "Hey! You can't do that here. This is a residential neighborhood. That farm of yours is lowering everyone's property value." Marcus wiped his forehead and looked over calmly. "Ma'am, this is my land. I've got the deed. Been in my family for generations." But Karen wasn't listening. Her face flushed red as she pulled out her phone. "We'll see about that," she snapped. "I'm calling the police. You can't just dump chemicals around here." Marcus sighed. He'd been through this before, neighbors questioning, assuming, and accusing. He didn't want trouble. He simply said, "Go ahead, do what you feel you need to do." Karen dialed 911 with a theatrical sense of urgency. "Yes, I'd like to report a suspicious man on our street. He looks like he's trespassing and I don't know what he's doing with those bags. It could be dangerous." As she spoke, she eyed Marcus with smug satisfaction, certain she was finally going to put him in his place. Neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains, whispers spreading down the street. Within minutes, the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. Marcus leaned against his truck, shaking his head. He knew what was coming. What Karen didn't know was that she was about to learn a lesson she'd never forget. The wail of sirens grew louder until 2 police cruisers turned into Willow Creek, lights flashing. Neighbors stepped further onto their porches, eager to watch the drama unfold. Karen stood proudly at the edge of her lawn, waving the officers down like she was doing them a favor. "Over here." "It's him," she called, pointing at Marcus as though she had caught a criminal in the act. Marcus stayed calm, arms resting at his sides. He knew the routine, hands visible, movements slow, no sudden gestures. It wasn't the first time someone had made assumptions about him. The officers stepped out of their cars, hands resting on their belts as they approached. "Sir, one." It was a sunny Saturday morning in Willow Creek, a quiet suburban neighborhood known for its manicured lawns, trimmed hedges, and strict HOA rules. Across the street from those tidy homes sat a small piece of farmland owned by Marcus Green, a tall, soft-spoken man in his late 30s who loved working the soil. Marcus had inherited the land from his grandfather, who had farmed it long before the subdivision was ever built. To Marcus, this wasn't just property, it was family history, a piece of his identity. That morning, Marcus was unloading bags of fertilizer from his truck, humming to himself as he prepared to plant late summer crops. The sound of chickens clucking from their coop and the scent of tilled earth filled the air. He wore old work boots, faded jeans, and a sweat-stained t-shirt, his hands rough but steady as he worked. Across the street, Karen Mitchell watched from behind her pristine white blinds. Karen was the self-proclaimed enforcer of the HOA, a woman in her 50s with a sharp tongue and a sharper glare. To her, Marcus's farm was an eyesore. She saw it as out of place among the neighborhood's identical houses and manicured yards. And worse, in her mind, Marcus didn't fit with her idea of who belonged in Willow Creek. Of them said, "We got a call about some suspicious activity. Mind telling us what you're doing here?" Before Marcus could answer, Karen jumped in. "He's not supposed to be here. This is a family neighborhood. Look at all those bags, who knows what's in them? It could be drugs or explosives for all we know. He doesn't belong here." The officers glanced at each other, then back at Marcus. His steady voice broke the tension. "Officers, this is my property. Those bags are fertilizer, and I'm preparing my fields for planting. I've got all the paperwork you need to prove ownership." Karen scoffed loudly. "Oh, please. Do you expect us to believe that? Look at him. Do you really think he owns land out here? He's lying to you." The crowd that had gathered shifted uncomfortably. Some neighbors whispered among themselves, realizing Karen was digging herself into a hole. The younger officer raised a hand to quiet her. "Ma'am, we'll handle this. Please step back." Karen bristled, but she folded her arms and muttered, "You'll see I'm right." Marcus pulled a folder from his truck and handed over a copy of the deed. The officer scanned the document, his expression changing from suspicion to understanding. "Looks legitimate," he said quietly to his partner. "He's telling the truth." Karen wasn't satisfied. "No. Don't just take his word for it. Look at him. He's hiding something. People like him always are." That's when Marcus decided enough was enough. He reached into his wallet slowly, pulling out a leather badge holder. Flipping it open, he held it up for the officers to see. The silver shield gleamed in the sunlight. Special Agent Marcus Green. Federal Law Enforcement. "I own this land, and I know my rights." The officers straightened immediately, their tone shifting from cautious to respectful. "Yes, sir," one of them said. "We apologize for the misunderstanding." Karen froze. Her jaw literally dropped, eyes wide in shock. She stammered, What? You're a cop." "No, that can't be." Marcus's calm gaze met hers. "No, ma'am. I'm not just a cop. I'm a federal agent. And you just called 911 on me for working on my own land." A stunned silence fell over the street. The neighbors who had been watching now whispered even louder, and Karen's face went pale. For the first time, she had no comeback. The silence on Willow Creek Lane was heavy. Karen stood frozen, her face a mixture of disbelief and embarrassment, while the officers exchanged awkward glances. One of them cleared his throat and said, "Sir, again, we apologize for the trouble. We had no idea." Marcus slipped his badge back into his wallet, his calm demeanor never wavering. "I understand you were just responding to a call. But this isn't the first time I've dealt with something like this. People make assumptions about me without ever asking a question." His words carried weight, and several neighbors shifted uncomfortably, realizing who his comment was aimed at. Karen, however, wasn't ready to give up her ground. She pointed a trembling finger at Marcus. "This doesn't change anything. I don't care what badge you flash. Farms don't belong here. Chickens, dirt, trucks, it all looks trashy. You're bringing down our neighborhood." Marcus stepped forward slowly, his voice steady but firm. "This land was here before this neighborhood was even built. My grandfather farmed it, my father maintained it, and now it's mine. I pay taxes, I follow the law, and I've got every right to work my fields. What you see as trash, I see as family legacy." The crowd murmured in agreement. A few neighbors nodded, their expressions softening with respect for Marcus's words. One older gentleman called out, "He's right, Karen. That farm's been here longer than most of us have. It's part of this community whether you like it or not." Karen's cheeks burned. She turned to the officers, desperate for backup. "You're just going to let him keep doing this? What about the HOA rules?" The senior officer shook his head. "Ma'am, HOA rules don't override state law or property rights. He's well within his rights to use his land this way. There's nothing illegal happening here." Marcus looked at her directly. "Karen, I'm not your enemy. I've never bothered you, never broken the law, never given you a reason to fear me. Yet you keep calling me out, not because of what I do, but because of what I look like. You didn't see a farmer, you saw a threat. That's the real problem here." The words landed like a punch. Some neighbors gasped softly, while others nodded in agreement. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line, but she couldn't argue. Deep down, she knew he was right. The younger officer spoke gently. "Ma'am, maybe it's time to rethink how you see your neighbor. He's not hurting anyone. In fact, he's maintaining something valuable." Marcus sighed, turning back toward his truck. "I've got work to finish. Officers, thank you for your time. And neighbors, my door is always open. If you've got questions about what I do, come talk to me. Don't assume. Don't accuse. Just ask." The officers nodded respectfully and returned to their cars, leaving the street in a quiet hush. Neighbors began retreating into their homes, still whispering about what they'd just witnessed. Karen, however, remained on her lawn, humiliated but still clinging to her bitterness. Marcus walked back to his fields, shoulders squared. The message was clear: he wasn't going anywhere. And for the first time, Karen realized she wasn't in control of the story anymore. The next morning, Willow Creek felt different. Neighbors who had seen the confrontation were still buzzing about it, and the story spread faster than wildfire. Some shared admiration for Marcus, proud that such a calm and respectable man lived among them. Others shook their heads at Karen, tired of her constant complaints and the way she treated people. Marcus, however, went about his work as usual. The sun rose, and he was already in the field, planting seeds with a quiet determination. The earth under his hands grounded him, reminding him of the resilience his family had passed down through generations. He wasn't one to seek drama, but he wasn't going to back down either. Karen, on the other hand, was furious. She couldn't believe she had been humiliated in front of the entire neighborhood. Every time she replayed the moment of Marcus flashing his badge, her stomach turned. She stormed into the HOA meeting that evening, vowing to do something about him. Sitting at the head of the table, she raised her voice. "We can't allow this farm to keep ruining our neighborhood's image. Chickens clucking, tractors rumbling, and dirt flying, it's unacceptable." But this time, the HOA members didn't nod along the way they usually did. One woman raised her hand timidly. "Karen, with respect, Marcus isn't breaking any rules. His land is outside the HOA jurisdiction. He's not bound by our regulations." Another neighbor chimed in, "And honestly, he's never caused trouble. He keeps to himself. My kids love seeing his chickens when we walk by. Maybe we should stop making this into an issue." Karen slammed her fist on the table. "You don't understand. People like him don't belong here. He makes the place look cheap." The room fell silent. The way she had phrased it exposed what many had already suspected, that her real problem wasn't the farm. It was Marcus himself. Several members exchanged uncomfortable looks, and one man finally spoke up. "Karen, I think you're out of line. Marcus is our neighbor, and he deserves respect. If anything, it's you who's making the neighborhood look bad with all this drama." The meeting ended with Karen storming out, her authority slipping through her fingers. She had always relied on the HOA to back her up, but now even they were beginning to turn against her. Meanwhile, back on his farm, Marcus sat on his porch as the evening sky turned orange and purple. He could see neighbors walking by, some giving him a friendly wave, others stopping to chat briefly. For the first time in years, people seemed genuinely curious about his farm. Children giggled at the chickens, and one boy shyly asked if he could help feed them. Marcus smiled. "Of course. Come by tomorrow after school, and I'll show you." As the boy ran off excitedly, Marcus leaned back in his chair. Maybe something good was coming out of this after all. His farm wasn't just surviving, it was beginning to bring the community together. But across the street, Karen sat alone in her spotless kitchen, seething. Her neighbors weren't listening to her anymore, and her control was slipping away. For the first time, she felt a crack of fear. The balance of power in Willow Creek was changing, and she couldn't stop it. Days passed, and the tension in Willow Creek slowly shifted. Instead of siding with Karen, more neighbors began visiting Marcus's farm. Parents brought their kids to see the chickens, couples stopped to chat while walking their dogs, and even teenagers helped him carry tools when they saw him working late. What once felt like a dividing line in the neighborhood was turning into a bridge. Marcus welcomed everyone with kindness. He explained how his grandfather had plowed the same soil with his bare hands, how his family had endured hardships but always found strength in the land. Neighbors who had barely spoken to him before were suddenly leaning on the fence, listening to his stories with genuine interest. Karen, however, couldn't stand it. From her window, she watched people laugh and smile at the very farm she had tried so hard to shut down. Each laugh felt like a jab to her pride. She decided to make one last attempt to reclaim control. One evening, she marched across the street while Marcus was watering rows of freshly planted crops. "You may have fooled everyone else," she snapped, "but you won't fool me. This farm doesn't belong in a neighborhood like ours." Marcus turned off the hose and faced her calmly. "Karen, no one's fooled. They've just realized the truth: you were wrong about me. This land isn't a nuisance. It's a part of the community now. The more you fight it, the more isolated you'll become." Karen's voice trembled with frustration. "You don't understand. I built this neighborhood's reputation. People respect me." Marcus shook his head. "Respect isn't demanded, Karen. It's earned. And lately, all you've earned is resentment. Look around, your neighbors aren't standing behind you anymore." As if on cue, several neighbors walked by and waved at Marcus, completely ignoring Karen. The sound of children laughing as they ran toward the chicken coop filled the air, drowning out her anger. She looked around and, for the first time, realized she was alone. Her shoulders sagged, and her glare softened into something almost like defeat. Without another word, she turned and walked back across the street, her power slipping away with every step. Marcus watched her go, then returned to his work. He didn't celebrate her defeat, he didn't need to. The victory was in the friendships forming around his farm, in the way people finally saw him for who he really was, not who Karen had painted him to be. That night, as the sun set over Willow Creek, Marcus sat on his porch with a sense of peace. The farm was thriving, the neighborhood was changing, and the weight of Karen's accusations no longer held him down. His badge had silenced her in the moment. But his dignity and integrity had won the long battle. And from that day forward, Willow Creek was never quite the same. The farm became a symbol of resilience and community, while Karen's reign as the self-appointed enforcer faded into memory. Marcus hadn't just defended his land, he had changed the heart of a neighborhood. If you enjoyed this powerful story, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel Z Boss for more amazing stories. Stay tuned, your support keeps the stories alive.